Hello friends, good morning. So in this video I'll be talking about the second part of metabolism. Yesterday we have discussed till the glucose 6 phosphate that is formed from glucose 1 phosphate by the enzyme phosphogluconeutase. Okay. Now this glucose 6 phosphate can be a source for the pentose phosphate pathway. Okay. And this pentose phosphate pathway, in pentose phosphate pathway there is no ATP production. Okay, there is no net ATP production in pentose phosphate pathway. Then why it is important so much? Okay, it is important because this pentose phosphate pathway have the oxidative and the non-oxidative phases. Okay, and during the oxidative phase there is a generation of the compound called as NADPH and also the ribose sugar. Okay, so this NADPH is a very useful compound in respiratory burst, as I told you yesterday, and also in antioxidant defense system, whereas the ribose sugar becomes a substrate for the purine synthesis, and this purine is very much important in the synthesis of the DNA. Okay, and this glucose 6 phosphate can also be converted into the free glucose by the enzyme glucose 6 phosphatase, okay, which is the enzyme of glycogenolysis as well as gluconeogenesis. Both of that pathway it is favored by the glucagon and is activated when there is a low blood sugar level. Okay, and this glucose can be phosphorylated into glucose 6 phosphate. This process is enzymatic reaction of the glycolysis. Okay, and the glycolysis it is favored by the insulin. Okay, this glucose 6 phosphate can be converted into pyruvate. Okay, and the conversion of a 6 carbon containing compound into a 3 carbon containing compound is called as glycolysis. This process is called as the glycolysis. Okay, and when the pyruvate become a substrate for the formation of the glucose. Now since it is a non-carbohydrate source, and if the carbohydrate is made out of the non-carbohydrate source, that pathway is called as the gluconeogenesis. Okay, as I told you, this gluconeogenesis it is favored by glucagon during hypoglycemia, and this pathway it is favored by insulin. One more thing, okay, this conversion of glucose into pyruvate is independent of oxygen. Okay, it is independent of oxygen. Only the fate of pyruvate is decided whether it will go on the dependence upon the oxygen. Okay, and this pyruvate, if there is an absence of oxygen, we say when there is anaerobic respiration, this pyruvate is converted into lactic acid. Okay, and this is an aerobic respiration. Okay, so generally this anaerobic respiration it is called it is defined as the process when the rate of consumption of ATP exceed the rate of production. Okay, and if the respiration is anaerobic, the pyruvate is converted into lactic acid. Okay, now during gluconeogenesis, this pyruvate can also be formed from the alanine. Okay, the pyruvate can be formed into alanine. This process is also a part of gluconeogenesis, where alanine, which is a gluconeogenic amino acid, will be converted into pyruvate by the transamination process. Okay, so this process, and also one more thing, not only alanine, this lactic or the lactate or lactic acid is also a gluconeogenic source. Okay, and conversion of the lactate to pyruvate and ultimately into the glucose is called as this Cori cycle. This is the Cori cycle, and this is the glucose alanine cycle. This both Cori cycle, glucose alanine cycle are a part of gluconeogenesis. Okay, now in case of aerobic respiration, the pyruvate is converted into, or pyruvate is diverted into the mitochondria, where it is completely oxidized via TCA cycle or Krebs cycle. Okay, into carbon dioxide and water. So the difference is that during aerobic respiration, the amount of ATP that is produced is different from that of the anaerobic respiration. Okay, and if in case of aerobic respiration, the rate of pyruvate is TCA cycle. Okay, which happens to be in the mitochondria, and this process happens to be in the cytoplasm. Okay, and when there is surplus amount of glucose taken, okay, this pyruvate can also be converted into acetyl-CoA, which become a source for the synthesis of free fatty acid, which ultimately result in formation of the triacylglycerol, which is the storage form of fat in our body. Okay, so in this way the metabolic pathways, they are integrated. Thank you.